Shaftsbury Select Board, and I'm calling this meeting to order at, I believe it's 6:05 on April 11, 2018. Purpose of this meeting is a public hearing on a proposed project by Shires Housing on Paran Road, and we'll be getting to that in just a moment. A little housekeeping first. Does any member of the Select Board have a conflict of interest with anything appearing on the agenda this evening?
No.
No? Are there any announcements? I wanted to make mention of one announcement just because it's relevant to the topic at hand. BCRC, the Bennington County Regional Commission is holding a forum on housing and the housing shortage in the area and the state. That will be on April 18th from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Bennington Housing Authority on Willow Road in Bennington. Willow Brook Road in Bennington. Are there any public comments not related to the hearing? Okay. In that case, I will open the hearing at this point. What does that ask? Oh, I don't know. I will open the hearing at this point. Let's set out a few ground rules. The way I want to do this is try to get all the information out at the front of the meeting. So we're going to have presentations from Shires Housing, from their engineer, and from their architect. Then we'll move into public comments. I'd like to start the public comments with informational questions. So if you have a question about details of the project, then we'll answer those up front to get all of that out. Then we'll go into public comments. I will do my best to share the pros and cons, if I'm able to, back and forth. I'm going to suggest that the Select Board hold the debate to ourselves while we absorb the public comments. After we close the hearing on public comments, then I'll ask for a motion on the Shires application. Once we get that motion moved and seconded, then we will go into the Select Board debate relative to the question of the day, which is, will the town receive the funds from the state grant, act as a conduit from the state to Shires Housing?
I think it's important that everybody understand that that's all we're doing. We are not approving or disapproving the entire project. We're only to answer whether or not the town is a conduit for the money to pass through. All your concerns will be handled at DRB meetings and Act 250 meetings and that sort of stuff. So we're only concerned about the pass-through of the money at this juncture.
Agreed. Good point.
One informational question, just so I don't assume too much. No permits have been granted from the DRB or the Act 250 Commission?
Correct.
And
is that correct? Yes.
Okay. And do you want some feedback about what positions the town might be able to take in terms of those future permit hearings where the town is an interested party?
Yes. This hearing is for all manner of comments relative to this housing project, as well as the particular issue of whether or not we should act as a conduit for the money.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So Stephanie, would you like to begin with your presentation on the project itself?
Sure.
Wherever you're comfortable.
Here or is that
Where's there a mic?
Yeah, that's probably
Should you
good.
hold the mic?
Where's there a mic?
a microphone?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna send it right in. All right. So you'll do my slides?
About both microphones.
This is
People may watching video.
Joe, would you point your microphone at us so that the people at home can hear?
You sure you want to hear me amplified twice? Okay. All right. So, hi, my name is Stephanie Lane. I'm the Executive Director of Shires Housing. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the Lake Paran Village project. So I've brought some information, some general information for you. And as Tim said, we'll do some questions and answers later on. So the focus of Shires
If I
Housing...
could interrupt for a second. If you'll push
Yes.
F5 on the computer there, it should go to full screen. There we go.
Ah. So a little bit about Shires Housing. Our focus is property management, real estate development, and the support and services, or SASH program, support and services at home. We're committed to providing quality, healthy, attractive housing for families who wish to live in Bennington County without being cost burdened. Units that we've developed recently, within the past 2 years, we have redeveloped 152 units, including 48 units contained in scattered site historic buildings throughout Bennington County, and we currently have 24 units under new construction. In terms of longevity and stewardship of our properties, we build with durable, high-quality materials to ensure the longevity and long-term stewardship of all of our properties. We are responsible for them for a minimum of 20 years and keeping them in good condition before any type of reinvestment is permitted. Our construction meets or exceeds all residential building energy standards codes. The developments are designed to meet the aesthetic character of the neighborhood in which they are built. We build and preserve quality housing that is well maintained. Investment is made monthly to reserve accounts to maintain our properties and to meet their needs for several years to come. So we do capital needs assessments that will go out as long as 20 years.
Excuse me, some people cannot hear you.
Okay.
Is that on?
I think it is. I feel like I can hear myself. No? Hello?
Yeah.
Better?
Got to go more.
Speak right into it, please.
Okay,
Pick it up and
sure.
hold it.
Okay. Now, there we go.
Yeah, I knew Dave could fix it.
I don't know if I like that. Okay. So we do make investment monthly into reserve accounts for all of our properties, and that's to make sure that we can maintain them for years to come. We do CNAs every 5 years, or capital needs assessments, to determine what the long-term needs of the properties will be, and so that we can plan, basically, and plan our budgets for each property around that. So it's very important for us to make sure that we maintain the physical condition of the properties. And we have a commitment to substance-free and smoke-free housing as well. Energy efficiency is something that's very important to Shires Housing. We incorporate this into all of our projects. We work with agencies such as Efficiency Vermont on both redevelopment and new construction, and we strive to achieve the highest energy efficiency level possible. We're committed to achieving the Energy Star rating on new construction, and we incorporate energy efficiency measures into all of our construction, including some of these measures such as air sealing, higher value insulation, LED lighting, low flow fixtures. We use efficient building practices, high efficiency ventilation systems, Energy Star appliances, bathroom and kitchen exhaust fans, shallow frost protected foundations in this project specifically. We have a commitment to reducing our carbon footprint and saving energy, and then we're able to pass that on to our residents. In terms of experience, we have a successful track record and a proven experience to produce developments of the highest quality. Our developments have included both the rehab of existing historic buildings and new construction, and we've worked and invested in the Bennington County community for over 25 years. And that was an example of a reconstruction this is actually a new construction on Roaring Branch Lane. So this is the most recent new construction project that Shires undertook, and this was completed in 2012. And this is just some shots from the inside of those units so you can get an idea of what they look like. This is a historic rehab project that we did in Bennington County, mainly in the town of Bennington, a 26-unit rehab of existing homes. And this involved relocation of the existing tenants as well in 3 phases, so it was fairly challenging, but We're happy to say that they all moved back into their homes and were thrilled with the results and with the energy efficiency, the reduction in their energy bills. This was completed in October of 2016. It included energy upgrades, siding, interior finishes, and in one building we installed a pellet boiler as well. This is a portion of the Battenkill North project. This is a 22-unit rehab of existing as well, all historic buildings located in Arlington, Bennington, and Shaftsbury. This is one of the Shaftsbury buildings, 1956, Route 67. The site has been completed and we're under lease up at this point. We expect this project to be fully complete in the spring of 18. It also included the Bentley Farmhouse on Route 313 in Arlington and two very historic firehouses in the town of Bennington, the Bradford Firehouse and the Firehouse Starkos on Pleasant Street as well. Applegate Apartments is a project that we completed in the fall of 2017. This one is located in the town of Bennington, and it's a 104-unit project, family project. And this one, the focus was energy specifically, so it was an energy rehab. We're happy to say we met all of our goals of that rehab. We installed a biomass plant that burns dry wood chips and replaced 29 oil-burning furnaces. So that was a huge accomplishment for Shires and really great for that project. It also included energy-efficient upgrades to every building, all of the 23 residential buildings involved. And 6 were rehabbed to meet ADA standards as well. So it was a huge undertaking, but we're very happy to say that project was a success. So specifically about the Lake Paran Village project, it's a 22-unit mixed-income housing development with a rent structure that meets the needs of working families. The project will address the need for additional quality housing in the Shaftsbury area. This is just an example of the income ranges for this project. They're pretty broad. It's more of a mixed income than we typically do. It could range from $22,600 for a household of one renting a one-bedroom unit, and affordable rent to someone at that income level would be about $600, up through about $77,000 for a family of 4. The rent range, as you can see, is about $575 to just over $1,000. The proposed site is composed of 4 new construction buildings, and we'll have our architect is here, and he's going to show you what they're going to look like, or at least give you a good idea. The proposed site plans are based on smart growth principles of compact development and are designed as distinctive, attractive neighborhood with a strong sense of place. It proposes to occupy 4 acres of the 7-acre site, 1.9 of which will be preserved permanently as conserved land. This is a site plan. It has changed slightly since this one was posted, and we'll show you that. One of the buildings has shifted a bit, but I left this one up just to give you a general idea of the site layout and the isolation area and conservation area. The darker green is where you'll see the conservation area for the site. In terms of conservation, as I said, a portion will be set aside as a conservation easement, and it will run up against the existing easement that borders the lake. The buildings will be designed in keeping with a traditional New England style farmhouse and should tie to the character of the neighborhood. And basically, the neighborhood was the inspiration for the design, and our architect looked through at properties in Shaftsbury and found some very charming farmhouse properties and thought that this would tie nicely with that. Market study, we've done a professionally commissioned market study with Doug Kennedy and Associates. Actually, we've done 2, and it has determined that there's a highly supported market need and demand, but that the Shaftsbury area has been highly underserved historically in having its housing needs met. So there's been very little development here and very little investment in Shaftsbury to date. This is just a little bit of factoids about Shires housing. In 2016 and 17, our activities have contributed over $11.5 million to the local economy. That comes in the form of payments to vendors, local subcontractors who are working on our projects, maintenance and materials for our existing portfolio, property taxes. Our anticipated investment for 2018 will exceed $8 million. And housing for the workforce attracts and retains local employers, so it's definitely an economic driver, what we do. And we also employ 20 individuals in Bennington County. So this is just discussing the need for housing in this area. And there's a need in Bennington County for quality housing for residents and potential residents, people that you want to draw and bring to Shaftsbury. Many Vermonters are cost burdened, so if we say cost burden, we mean they're paying more than 30% of their gross monthly income on their house payment. And many are higher than 50%, which is really not a sustainable level for anyone to pay 50% of their income for their housing needs. Finding quality housing in close proximity to jobs and services remains a challenge for many small towns. Housing is one of the primary social determinants of health, so healthy housing leads to healthier children. Housing that is priced appropriately based on income affords residents the opportunity to purchase more local goods and services as they have more disposable income. And there's a need for several approaches. So we're not the only answer to the housing problem. You know, it will take more than Shires building one development in this town. There's a definite shortage of housing, and it's something that needs to be done collaboratively. It should be private investors, the not-for-profit sector. You know, there's housing of several types needed. It's not just one type of housing. And those that we serve are a fairly narrow band of the population. So even if this is built, there will be need for more. And currently, the Bennington County apartment rental vacancy rate is 0.4%. So that really drives home the need for more decent quality rental housing for the residents. Okay. So considerations about this project. It provides appropriate housing to attract and retain a strong local workforce. So for local employers, it's important to have a place for their employees to live, and a place that they can live affordably that's decent. To attract people to Shaftsbury who work nearby, to improve neighborhood aesthetics. The enhancement of the local rental portfolio tends to affect the overall quality in terms of condition of other landlords' properties. Investment of the town of $6.3 million. It brings jobs, it brings work to the subs, it brings work to the local insurance agent, to local contractors. We hire local as often as we possibly can, and for most of our jobs. Job creation and sustainability, business for local vendors and contractors, and upon substantial completion, the partnership will pay 100% of the town taxes based on the assessed value, increasing the tax revenue for the town of Shaftsbury. So one of the considerations that we've discussed with the select board is Paran Road. And I understand Paran Road has some issues, and it's not in the greatest condition. And we understand that adding 22 units on that road it could contribute to that issue. So we didn't create it, but we definitely know that we would add to it with this. So we'd like to help provide a solution. So we have talked with your distinguished select board about what the issues are and some of the things done to mitigate this in the past. And, it passes through a wetland. Yeah, that's not great for the road, and Paran Acres traffic contributes a lot to this. Is paving an option? We've priced this out a little bit, just very preliminarily, what we thought maybe it would cost. And, it's substantial, the numbers for this. Additional tax revenue that the development would generate could help to pay for a long-term strategy to address this. We're also willing to pay for an engineering study so that something could be mapped out for the future. So a study doesn't solve it, but at least it gets you to a plan. So if that's something that helps, we want to be able to do that so that we can mitigate further erosion, and whether it's yearly upkeep again, or if it's paving a portion of the road that goes to North Bennington from McCarthy. We don't know what this looks like yet. And we probably won't until we have a study in hand that we can consult and a professional who's going to tell us what the best solution is. There's a map that was included. Tim?
Yeah, I don't think we need to get into the map right now. When
Okay.
we were brainstorming about the road, the map was
Okay.
relevant, but we're not to that point yet.
Okay. All right, so tonight, we're here to ask for a resolution from the Town of Shaftsbury Select Board and to allow the submission of a grant application on behalf of the town. The town would act as the conduit for the grant funds. It's a small portion of the overall total project, but it's something that we do through the town to engage the community in the process, and it's another source of funding for the project. We have other funders, of course. You know, as you can imagine, in these projects, there are several other funders, and you know, they may invest as much as $6 million in the project. So we're asking the town to be the conduit for a piece of this. Let's see. So we feel that, you know, this additional piece, although it's a small portion of the total funding, it would demonstrate a commitment to bring resources to the town, support jobs and local businesses, create opportunity for residents, provide housing that's quality, dignified, attractive, energy efficient, and healthy for Shaftsbury residents. So that's what I'm here to request this evening of the select board, and to answer questions. So, would you like to show kind of the elevations of this?
Yeah, Jeff Goldstone, the architect on the project, has some more information about how it's going to look.
I'm going to bring them over for a second, Sandy. You know, I set them up here. These are.
Yeah.
I know. I just keep wanting to change things. That's where the microphone is. All right. I'm going to allow civil engineer who's also.
Bring that forward here where it's closer to where we can see.
Of course, although I'll have to move back and forth a bit. I don't know.
Maybe go ahead and set it out there and take the microphone in hand.
Sure.
Angles of this side of the room, can see it too.
I was hoping that the camera would be able to see it as well, so I'll do the best I can. What you see here is a site plan, a focused site plan of just the area of development. And I'm going to ask that Jason Gomes just I'll give you a minute. He's a civil engineer, and he'll address the site plan issues. So let me address the buildings themselves. What I have with me today is two views of the buildings as they appear from the road. I don't have all building elevations to show you at this time, but this establishes more or less the building style that we're contemplating for the road, or for the buildings of the site. There are 4 buildings, as you can see on the site plan here. 2 are nearly identical. They are farmhouse style buildings. They immediately face the road. They're set back similarly to the other buildings on the roads around Shaftsbury, around Vermont in general, but also certainly on this particular road. They both address the road with front porches, front doors, et cetera, directed to the road. And there's no parking in front of them. Parking is between the 2 buildings where the driveway is that serves the entire site. So the view that you see is a view as you head north on the road. So the building's obviously situated on the right side of the road.
Paran Road?
That's correct, Paran Road, looking towards McCarthy Acres Road, down in this direction. This is a view looking in the opposite direction of the same 2 buildings. So there are 2 side-by-side buildings, and there's quite a bit of planting proposed for in front of the buildings, big trees along the roadway. There obviously are some trees that would be removed. Many of the trees in the area are not in particularly good shape now, and we'll have to do some resculpting of the property in order to get the 4 buildings in. So we'll have new trees along the roadway as shown. We're talking about a clapboard style building using a fiber cement clapboard product, which is a very sustainable product. It holds paint well, it lasts a good long time. We're talking about shingled roofs, We're talking about a front porch in front of each of the units. They are all porches that are accessible to the paths, so every front door is an accessible front door. They're not all ADA accessible units, but on the site there are 2 ADA units as well as 1 sensory unit. They're all built to what's called universal design standards. They are all 2-story buildings. As I said, the 2 buildings are very similar to one another, the 2 farmhouse-style buildings that immediately face the road. And then, if you look at the other 2 buildings on the site are situated further back. This long building, much more like a long barn-style building, and the small rectangular building have 6 apartments in one and 4 in the other. Each of the 2 main house buildings also have 6 apartments in them. I'm sorry? I can't hear you. Site issues? Okay. Correct me when I go wrong. And I'm afraid I have to step around so I can see it as I point to things. The entire site that Shires Housing would be taking possession of is this area here. So this is McCarthy Acres Road. This is Paran. Is it okay that you can't see anything I'm talking about? Okay. This is Paran
We've been
Road
through it a
here.
time or two.
The single driveway off Paran Road here services all the units, and then there's a small secondary driveway that goes out to McCarthy Acre Road, which has been requested by the fire department, so that we have a secondary way out of the site. The green circle, which many of you might notice here, is a well isolation area. The well for the site would be situated somewhere in this location, and we have a 200-foot buffer to that well that we're not building within. That also, as Stephanie introduced, is the conservation area. That's an area that will never be built on for, it's being reserved as an unbuilt area. And it then is adjacent to the undeveloped area that goes to the lake. Again, the 2 buildings that face Paran Road are the 2 we call farmhouse buildings, and the other 2 buildings are very deeper into the site. There are 33 parking spaces proposed, I believe, on the site, including handicapped places near the 2 handicapped units. And I think that's all I really need to tell you about the site layout. And certainly more specific questions can be addressed directly to Jason.
Can you just trace the shoreline?
I can try. Oh, yes, I can. Right along here. It's very pale on here, but there's a pale blue line. If you can come up and see it later, you can certainly see that.
What's in the space between the green and the lake?
The ownership of this,
I mean, what is it now? Is it forested?
it's all forested, yes. And the high point is very close to the property line. So the slope comes up and then goes back down to the road. And we're not going to be anywhere near that high point.
So the trail for the Robert Frost Act goes through that.
Does the trail go through that property?
You have to.
The trail for the Robert Frost Trail goes through, this is
Yeah.
fund, this is owned by Fund for North Bend.
Yeah, right.
Right, it goes through the adjacent property, not through the Shires property. Correct.
How many square feet are units from what to what?
They range, I knew somebody would ask this question. The buildings range from, and I'm sorry, I don't have this tip of my tongue, from like 2,600 to just over 5,000 square feet. So there are 6 units in the larger buildings, so there are 800, 900 square foot units up to maybe 1,100 and 1,200 square foot units. There are units from 1 bedroom to 3 bedrooms. There are 4 units. So
Of course.
yeah.
Are you dealing with wastewater?
With wastewater, it's tied into the sewer.
What do you need for water?
We have a well.
Oh.
We will have a well.
Oh, so you're not getting enough drinking water.
No, we're not going to go up to water.
What are the 2 buildings down below there?
These are the Paran Lake, I forgot what they call them, the recreational.
Yeah, those are the recreation areas.
Okay.
Yeah. The existing sewer line for 10 Bennington is here at the edge of, basically at the edge of the Shaftsbury Bennington border. And we've received,
Could you guys use microphones?
Yes, my
I'd like to
apologies.
hear both the questions from the
Oh,
audience
okay.
and the answers.
Sure, or we could repeat the questions easily. So if you go back to this question was related to the sewer. And where's the sewer now? The property will be served by a sewer, and Jason was talking about where the sewer is now.
so we've received, we have entered into essentially a conceptual operating agreement with the town of Bennington where they will accept the sewage from this site.
And would that go just to these houses, or would other people in that area be able to plug into the sewer system?
Currently, it's not contemplated it's basically going to serve this property. But if at such a time that Shaftsbury were to wish to create a sewer district, then I believe Shires would be willing to grant an easement across the property to allow for that access. Presuming the town can accept that additional flow.
Which school district is it in?
This is in Shaftsbury District 1. South of, that would be the North Bennington, well, or the non-participating district, correct?
The village school.
Okay.
Any other questions about the site or the buildings themselves? Happy to answer.
The question I have is, when they talked, they said they weren't going to be coming off McCarthy Acres, but now you're saying the secondary driveway will be coming off.
There's
McCarthy Acres.
it is, the original, when we first discussed, we had 2 accesses off of McCarthy Acres, and now we have 1. So we have the main access drive is off of Paran Road.
Right.
And there's a secondary access off of McCarthy Acres. And the intent for that is to create, essentially allow for a loop so that, mostly for emergency vehicles.
But it won't be for emergency vehicles, the residents will be using that to exit.
They will be able to use that to exit, that's correct.
And there's no way that could be turned onto Lake Paran Road, a loop, versus coming on McCarthy Acres?
I can never say there's no way to do anything that I can answer the question that way, but in developing this corner of the property with the areas we need to preserve for the well and for the preservation land, it's very difficult to imagine both the driveways being tight enough that we could actually get the advantage of having 2 driveways that's been required of us without having sort of one at each end. We haven't made the attempt to redesign the site towards that, but at this point we haven't looked at
Well, the
it.
reason why I say that is because when they pull out of there, they're going to have their headlights right at my parents' house. Every vehicle that pulls out of there.
This building is here.
Yeah.
The driveway is far beyond that dwelling.
Excuse me?
The existing dwelling is located here, and the driveway is over here.
Right.
So it's not in front
When
of
they
the
come in,
house.
they're going to pull like this. The light's going to go across their house. Yes.
Any other questions for the Shires housing folks? Engineering, architectural? Yes.
What's included in the rent? What does the landlord provide besides the space?
Provide snow removal, trash removal, and the property management are included in the rent. The tenant pays for the electric only.
Okay, so there's a maintenance issue, Shires will take care of.
We take care of it. We have people on call 24 hours a day, so it's on-demand maintenance right now.
Thanks.
Is any of the property in anywhere?
I'm sorry?
Is any of the property buildings in anywhere?
Not in this location, no.
Excuse me, have we now entered the informational part?
It seems to be working fine to kind of mix it together, so yes, you can ask an informational question.
I don't want to just jump in, should we raise hands or what?
Tyler had his hand up, then we'll go to you.
I just wondered about cable. We're talking about utilities.
Cable is considered a non-essential utility, so the residents are responsible for their own cable.
The houses are wired for cable,
They're wired for cable
and they would do the connection.
and Wi-Fi.
Do we know, in fact, that Comcast services that
Yes.
area?
I've got it. I've got it at the Free House. I have Comcast at the Free House, which is just down the road from there.
Okay.
Who are the funding organizations, and what are the sources of their funds?
We have Vermont Housing and Conservation Board is one of the funders considering, we go to board meetings actually, so we're in the process of getting funded. Affordable Housing Partnership through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston has committed money to the project. We also have Vermont Community Development Program and their implementation grant. And that would be the grant that we're asking for this evening. And also housing tax credits would be part of this project as well. And that would be through the Vermont Housing and Finance Agency. And there will be a small amount of hard debt as well in the project through People's Bank.
Okay, and the source of their funds is?
Depends on the funder. VHCB has funding through the home program. They also have funding through.
Where do they get their money?
Where
That
does
they give to you?
VHCB get their money?
All of it.
Some is state-driven, and some is driven through the federal government.
So it is government revenue that provide it?
Some are.
Okay. Some are. To what extent?
Well, the housing tax credit program is private investors, so they're issued and private investors buy the tax credits. The home program is funded through HUD. BCDP is basically it's funded through HUD if you go back a bit, but it comes through the state. The housing revenue bond is funded through the state as well.
Okay, so all of these impact taxpayers in general in a negative fashion. Either the funds are directly provided out of tax revenues, or somebody has a level of amelioration of their tax burden because of their involvement.
Their funds are already allocated. You already pay for these services. Tax credits are part of the omnibus bill that was just approved, actually at an increase.
Just because they're available doesn't mean we have to take advantage of them.
We sell them to investors to generate equity for the project.
More informational questions? Well,
Road questions. You're quite right, Paran Road has been a problem for a very long time. You talk about funding a study to figure out what to do with the road. And I don't know how much that is. My question is that money, do we need the study, or do we already know what the road needs to be fixed? And could we use that money to simply work on the road in addition to, I'm sure it's on the town's list of roads to be done, it was 10 or 15 years ago, so.
it's always on the list.
I don't think it's been resolved
Sounds
since.
like we know the symptoms, but maybe not the cure yet. So I think this may help with the long-term solution.
Well, so my question is do we need the study, or do we know what needs to happen? And would the same amount of money be available to simply invest in doing what needs to happen to the road? And maybe, I mean, really the whole road needs to be done, and if people are living there, I assume they want to be able to go out either end.
So you're saying if the town decided they did not want to undertake the study, would the funds still be available to put toward the repairs for the roads?
Yes. And they would.
They would.
And how much money are you talking about?
Right now, I mean, we've been talking, but at this point, about 25,000.
Another informational question. I saw that folks doing some cores along the Paran Road not too long ago, and I stopped and talked to the gentleman that seemed to be directing it. And he said that they were looking into some upgrades to the North Bennington water system, which feeds that area and feeds Paran neighbors, predominantly for fire support, he said. Is there a reason why this project wouldn't be rolled into that increase in capacity?
Jerry Allen. That's Jerry Allen. if he wants to talk.
Are you asking about water supply
Water
provided to
supply,
this
yes. I'm
area?
saying they're already looking at increasing capacity along the Paran Road for other reasons. Why would you stick in a well, I guess is the question.
We have repeatedly, we have made several requests to the village of North Bennington Water Supply, and they have not granted us an allocation.
Okay.
Lon?
During the part of the presentation where we couldn't quite hear you, I thought you said that the commitment for the Shires was 25 years. And then after that, it was left open-ended. So since we couldn't quite hear all of what you were saying, could you explain the 25 years? And then can you tell us, since you've been in business 25 years, what's happening to those houses that are now aging out of the 25-year guarantee period?
So if a project has housing credits in it, there's an initial 15-year period of compliance. The investors take the tax credits during the first 10, and then there's compliance for an additional 5. Typically, then there's an extended use, so it's actually 30 years that we would be responsible for maintaining that property at a minimum. Some of our funding sources actually are in perpetuity. So something like a VHCB grant would be in perpetuity, so it would remain, we would be responsible for that property in keeping it for its intended use and in keeping it in good condition and financially viable for life, basically, is what we're committing to the extent that's possible with the building.
But what, is there any thought at the front end what you're going to do if you're not going to have longer than a 25 or 30-year commitment? I mean, is it going to be an association or some other organization that's going to be responsible for it? Because 25 years on an existing structure goes by pretty quickly.
Sure. And you also asked about existing properties that we have, and we've had some for many years. Some have been rolled into other partnerships as they've needed additional work done. We have some aging rehabs that we had to go back through and syndicate and do some upgrades for them. But yes, in terms of longevity, I mean, we've been around for over 25 years, close to 30 years now. We maintain them. And if we were, you're asking if we weren't around, if we went out of business, the agencies that have invested would assign these properties to another agency such as ours that's a not-for-profit, mission-driven, that would maintain the properties. And we do our capital needs assessments out for at least 20 years. So we're planning at 20 years at a time.
So a good example of what happens after 25 years is the Bennington Historic Rehab and a portion of the Batten Hill North project. So all of those, most of those properties were originally rehabbed in the early 90s, right? And then basically last year and the year before last, they were essentially gone back through and completely rehabilitated. So those were example properties.
That's the year-to-year management that I'm more concerned of rather than whether or not they're just keeping them up. Because if there's no, for example, Habitat is building a small development, and in order to make sure that the homeowner's interests are established at the front end, when you have the ability to set up a structure for common use community, you do that before you build. If you're not going to have any homeowners management down the road, well, that's fine, but I'm trying to figure out what's the management structure going to be once you've timed out on your commitment to the project.
We don't time out, essentially. We take responsibilities for these projects for the lifetime of the project. So they're ours. We own them. We manage them, and they're ours. We have to be good stewards of these projects. We're responsible for the funding. The funding is very long-term, and we are on the hook for all of it, and for the compliance annually. We have a full maintenance staff, a fully trained property management staff to make sure that these are run. There's a ton of compliance involved for us in maintaining these, both financially and the physical condition as well. So we have a fully trained staff that handles this, and we do it well.
That's what I was thinking.
Sorry.
Carl?
You said that you make an effort to use as many local subcontractors as possible.
Yes.
First question is, do you have a percent that your prime contractors are supposed to aim for in terms of subcontractors locally, and what does local mean? And then secondly, do you also use local maintenance people for your project, or do they come from somewhere else?
Local to me means Bennington County. Doesn't mean Rutland, it means Bennington County. We use a lot of the contractors that we work with at Shires on our portfolio have ended up working on our larger projects because of referrals from us and because of our insistence to use local contractors. We use local plumbers such as Hayden or Roy's Plumbing, local electricians, local framers like JTG Construction, Community Drywall. Typically, we'll hire a construction manager, and the subs will work for the construction manager, but at our referral.
So you don't have a percentage?
I would say on Batten Kill, it was probably about 60%.
I'm just saying your contract will be fine, because I don't understand.
Right.
And again, for maintenance, for the 25 or 30 years that you'll be able to sing in, are those also local?
Those are all local. Those are all local, yes. And locally sourced materials as well.
Yes.
I have a number of comments. I don't want to hog the floor.
Okay, we're going to get to comments after we get through the informational part. Are there any more questions for these guys here? I have one other informational piece that I wanted to present. Art?
I've got a question. You talked a lot about subcontractors, but the two brick houses on 67, I witnessed that, and I never saw a single local person there. All came from Bellows Falls, Rutland.
Hayden Plumbing,
No,
Roy's Plumbing,
no.
they both work on it.
Not that one. Rose was in Bennington.
Right.
No,
Who
they
was the
didn't
one?
do Shaftsbury, that was Black River.
Oh, Black
Yeah.
River was that one?
Yeah.
I want to elaborate a little on the process. The contracts with the construction managers require them to bid this project and to bid each piece of this project. All of these contracts with the construction managers have required that they solicit local bids. We have not always been successful in employing local contractors when bids come in lower from non-locals. But we try very hard to always solicit local. And it's been our experience that there have been local contractors on these projects. The project that Art was mentioning is a project that had, it had 7 buildings in it. And although, and I'm quite sure that there were local employees on that, well, I know there were local employees on that project. The trucks you saw in and out, and I'm sure there were some locals, primarily were from slightly further away because they're the ones who got the bid. We used, on that same project, we used Roy's Plumbing and Heating for the Bennington part of it, but they were incapable of taking on the entire project. So we did our best, and we intend, of course, to do the same on future projects. We do require them to get local bids or to solicit local bids for all areas if they're available.
Tenants, how do you choose your tenants? Are there criteria they're supposed to follow? And you have a waiting list right now? Is there a system of priorities for people who should move up on the wait list? How does that work?
We do have a wait list. We always have a wait list. And we've been doing a lot of marketing lately because of the newly completed Batten Kill North project, so we have a significant wait list right now. Screening is done. We do credit and criminal background checks on all of our potential residents. We do a full application. We check landlord references. We gather income information. If they are moving into a unit that has an income restriction, we have to ensure that they meet the guidelines of that unit. And we're careful. We're very careful with our screening process. What else was your question? I'm sorry, let me get the second part. Is that it?
How many vacancies are currently available in all your properties?
We typically run 5% or under on vacancy, and that's just the nature of the beast. Right now, we're leasing up Batten Kill North. So we have some vacancies because we're just starting to lease it up, but typically we run under 5%, closer to 4.
So I understand you have a wait list,
We
but
do.
you also have,
Well, sure, because some units are being turned over, so you'll have one that's empty and is being turned over while we're qualifying someone to come in. So that's just the nature of it. It's very rare that you'll see it's 100%. It's a snapshot in time when you hit that, but there's always some turnover going on for one reason or another. So you'll have an empty here or there. And not everyone will qualify either.
Yes.
I know you wanted to say something else. I actually came to speak on behalf of the rental project.
All right, we're going to get to the,
My husband, our car just broke tonight, which is why I was a few minutes late, and I actually came up in my 5 minutes. So I just wanted to say a couple of things. We've been renting for 3 years in Bennington, 3 different places, for some local landlord things. I never imagined myself renting at this age. We rented 2 houses, one house here in Bennington that went into foreclosure. We rented another house in the southwest that went into foreclosure, and they didn't tell us that. Of course, you keep paying the rent, and then you have to move. We had another guy who was heat and hot water. It was included, and he turns off the hot water because we don't really know why, but he did. And that's different intervals because he wanted to. And so when you look at something like this where it is going to be a system and where it's, I mean, these are all the greatest ways to do planning. I was on the planning board for 6 years in Northern Rensselaer County back in the late 80s and early 90s, and this is what we dreamed about, and we weren't there. But the problems that you have now as a tenant are so far beyond anything I ever saw 20, 30, 40 years ago. Whenever I was a tenant, I was a tenant a couple of years, 20 years ago, when we had a big career change. And then, of course, 20 years before that, before I owned property, I owned a farm, I owned a house in the Cape, a variety of things. But the problem with landlords is amazing. We had a tree fall on our house, and, we had a tree fall on our car. And the landlord would not take it. It was a car length away. A good part of the tree fell on it, cost $5,500 worth of damage. The landlord would say absolutely nothing. And this is somebody that you would look at as incredibly respectable on Monument Avenue here in Vermont, in Bennington. And,
all right, I'm going to ask
they
you to
wouldn't
wrap it
even-
up real quickly because I am giving you a hardship
Yeah.
certificate here for this.
Yeah. So I just want to say that trying to get a door handle fixed. I almost called, it took 5 months before I was worried my son wasn't going to be able to get in the house, and I was going to call a locksmith, and I decided I'll give him one more try to see if he'll do it. Won't give you information about something. The rental laws are so weak in Vermont for the tenants. They're very weak for the tenants. And the only way that our problem was actionable, I had to go to an attorney to find out that our problem was actionable because of negligence. And of course,
Okay, can you
really
just
did
tell
not-
us if you're for or against the project?
Yeah, I'm for the project. I
Okay,
think
thank
we
you.
need
We're going to
more
get back to
housing.
the way I told everybody the
But I
rules
want
was
you to
gonna work.
know, it's a different, I bet none of you have rented in 40 years or 50 years. It is a ball game you can't imagine. It is, they look like they're going to be decent to you, and, you sign a lease and you
All right,
pay out
thank you.
money.
Thank you. I want to get to one other thing, just to sort of lay the groundwork informationally for the need for this type of thing. I've been trying to explain to the board the meetings that I've been going to about the need for housing. A lot of them are BCRC meetings. A lot of the people at BCRC, the Bennington County Regional Commission, have been providing this information. Jonathan Cooper is somebody I run into regularly about this, and I asked him to come here and just give us a quick synopsis of the state of housing in general in Bennington County, so we have context for the need for this type of project.
Sure. Excuse me. All right. Which of the three is closest to my height? Is this okay? Here? All right. So thank you for the invitation tonight. It's nice to meet you all. My name is Jonathan Cooper, and I work in economic community development issues at the Regional Planning Commission in Bennington. And I thought that really one of the sort of the best ways to frame a project like this is to sort of, as I always do, I guess as is my want in my profession, is I look for a master plan or a regional plan of some kind. And in it, there was a remarkable comment or a goal stated out that supply of housing sufficient to meet the needs of diversity of social and income groups should be available in all communities in the region. As it is right now, most of us are aware that housing in Bennington County is an older stock. And as we were just treated to, we learned a lot about some of the challenges of housing with an older stock. Am I doing that?
Where's that coming from?
I didn't have dinner yet. That might but so there's really a number of things that were sort of described in that plan from 2015, and I feel like this project addresses all of them. First and foremost, as we heard, the cost of housing relative to income is an issue here in Bennington County. So much so, as was pointed out, that over 30% or 65% of people are contributing more than 30% of their income, and some as much as 50%. And here in Shaftsbury, that's no exception to the rule. Energy costs are an issue, up to about $300 per unit per month. This is something that new builds, Energy Star ratings, really can help families with, especially in workforce development, workforce housing. Location, providing access to labor markets, jobs is an issue. More and more people where there's workforce housing demand that outstrips supply travel from farther and farther afield, or live in housing that does not meet their needs simply because it meets one particular need. And this is something that is true throughout the county. Being nearby 7A, getting down to 7, to Route 279 offers a lot of opportunities to people and options for people. The cost of construction relative to market value are ever more difficult, particularly in trying to create housing for people that is not in a upscale manner. And so these sorts of funding sources that Stephanie discussed, sort of bringing together a number, being creative with bundling resources is ever more essential as costs continue to increase for labor, for materials, and any place that is attempting to make a point of sourcing locally and working with local contractors and subcontractors. One of the other interesting things in looking at public terms of numbers is that our vacancy rates, as was discussed, are lower than you'd like to see. That it implies that there just isn't the supply to meet the demand, and this means that either things end up costing more money than they ordinarily would under normal market conditions, or that people choose options that they would otherwise not prefer, things that are sort of causing additional headaches for them to have to work through. There's one last point I kind of wanted to make here, and that is that the Regional Planning Commission provides a lot of staffing and servicing to the Economic Development Corporation, the entity in the area, BCIC. And so as part of my work, I'm in touch frequently with employers throughout the region, from Pownell to Rupert. And there's employers in both Pownell and Rupert, I promise. One of the most common things that we hear is like, what are the barriers to your growth? And there's opportunities for growth. It's got a lot to do with the workforce, recruiting workforce, and specifically in housing, finding places for new employees to live, or for employees who are trying to find a place for their family to live as well. Having moved here in September 2016 from New Haven, Connecticut, I stumbled into this issue myself. And so for reasons both personal and professional, I want to sort of give an update on some of the issues we're seeing around the county, and also to express Regional Planning Corporation and Development Corporation's complete support for Lake Paran Village project. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at the appropriate time.
Now's good. Any questions for Jonathan about the state of housing?
Jonathan, can you give some context of what you consider a healthy vacancy rate is? Just sort of telling us 0.4 is not healthy. I mean, what is it?
Generally, with multi-unit residential dwelling units, you'd like to see something around 6 or 8%. So point 4, the amount of multifamily units is low. It's very low. But for your broader rental, sale, etc., you're looking north of that even, somewhere around 10%. It's considered a standard number for supply and demand.
So, would you consider, from what you heard, that would be offered by this additional housing, would that be a minor, moderate, or severe impact on the existing vacancy right here, or I should say for people that are renting houses, having a substantial impact on their income?
The impact on income?
On the impact, would what you saw, 22 units, have a significant impact on bringing down rents in Shaftsbury? So that people that are owners of property that are renting might have concerns, this is going to impact my ability to get the rent that I presently get.
Oh, I don't believe so. The demand is exceptionally high. There's waiting lists for places that are in the process of being completed. So I think that there would be a negligible impact in that respect to other existing landlords in the town or the region.
Yes, is this going to be for affordable housing, or is it going to be subsidized, or what have you, or is it a certain income? Is it going to be like 55 and over, or is it going to be for families that will impact our schools?
I'm so delighted to defer to Stephanie Lane on that. But for some individuals who maybe want to catch those details.
So this project will be, who asked me the question? I'm sorry. So the project will be mixed income. So some of it will be 60% of median and under, and other units will be as high as 120% of median. So the typical income range will be between about $22,000 and $74,000. So it is mixed income.
How about, what will the impact be on our school systems?
We think since the schools we believe are undersubscribed currently, we think that it will have a good impact on the schools. And we think potentially we're estimating based on other projects, maybe between 6 and 10 children, which the schools have expressed that they can absorb successfully and would be happy to have.
I have one more question. Go ahead. When we see so many places like in Bennington, the old high school needs to be something done with. Why don't we do something there instead of take beautiful land that everybody enjoys, putting a building there when we have so many other buildings that are vacant that could be turned
I
into
believe
housing?
there are developers looking at those buildings. It just isn't us. But there are developers that are looking at it. I don't know what they intend to do with it, though. That's just not one that's in our pipeline. And they're expensive.
All right, I think we're probably ready to get into comments, and I know you've been chomping at the bit, sir, so
Sorry.
I'd be happy to let you go first. Can we get that microphone back?
Yeah, I think we should go to that one. I'll turn
This one?
Yeah.
Are we, can you hear us okay at the board here? Okay, we'll try to speak up.
Could I ask a question while you're getting set up? Did you, I thought the meeting started at 7, so I just got here. Did you already present the traffic evaluation?
The meeting started at 6, and we've gone through quite a bit of information about the project. What we said about the road situation is that essentially Paran Road has always been a problem. This project will add more traffic to Paran Road. There are several options for dealing with Paran Road. Stephanie offered that the project will add tax revenue to the town to help deal with the Paran Road problem. And Shires has offered to up to $25,000 to look at a study for to evaluate those various options for making sure that Paran Road remains viable.
And what would $25,000 accomplish? Just a study?
It was to, our initial discussions talked about a study. It was also brought up tonight that perhaps we don't need a study and we would just rather have $25,000 worth of gravel. That's something that the select board can think about.
I'm wondering, we were all around, we live around that community that's going to be supposedly taken. We were told 7 p.m. the meeting, and I wonder why. Why didn't we get a notice saying it was at 6?
It was in the paper at 6 at the last select board meeting. I was a little confused about the time. I expressed confusion that I wasn't sure if it was 6 or 7. Typically, our hearings are at 7, so that may have been why that happened, but this one got scheduled at 6.
That's frustrating.
You want to try now? Is this the mic that we're going to have for them?
Yeah, I can make this one.
Yeah, let's get them together so that the crowd here and the folks at home will hear them.
Hi there, my name is Noel Cardiff. I live in Paran Acres. I have a number of points I want to discuss, some of which have directly to do with this housing project. Some have to do with improvements in Shaftsbury in general. However, they're all related. One of the things I wanted to start off with is my basic philosophy with regards to housing and government interactions. I honestly believe government should not be a landlord, either directly or indirectly. And that is the case here because the ultimate source of grants is taxpayer dollars. Housing should be provided by the private sector with substantial government regulation as far as I'm concerned, so the person who complained about the horrific experiences she had hopefully has an easier place to go when those sorts of things happen. I've been a landlord myself, not here, but in New York. I've always tried to provide good places for my tenants, and while doing that, I got stories from the tenants I had that completely verified what she was saying. And that is an issue that is separate from this and should be addressed separately. One of the things I keep hearing is this is workforce housing. One of the things I keep hearing in this area is how we have to attract new residents to the area. And the theory that's been presented here is that if you have decent housing, people will come. Okay? That's not true. All right? If you have work, people will come. People will not come if they cannot earn an income to pay for their housing. All right? What we need to do is to focus on developing added value industry and commercial businesses that pay a decent wage instead of minimum wage from retail and tourism and agriculture. We need to get some real value-added businesses in this area. If you can bring them in, okay, the people will follow. And the way you bring them in is you provide the infrastructure necessary for them to function, for them to be able to communicate, for them to be able to drive their products to market, things of this nature. Right now, we have 19th century roads, and it's the 21st century. Okay? You can build all the housing you want, and you will not keep people from escaping Vermont. By the way, of course, saying the things that I did about government not being a landlord, I really don't believe that the select board should act as a shield for an organization that has an agenda that's not in the best interest of the citizens of Shaftsbury or Bennington County or Vermont in general. The focus really needs to be on something other than providing housing. You can provide housing if you don't have the work. The housing ultimately will decay the quality of the people who, and I don't mean personal quality, but I mean the financial quality of people who reside there will decrease. You will be further and further unable to support and maintain the buildings, and you'll see an overall decay eventually. And I understand right now Shires has some very nice properties, okay? I just don't know how sustainable it is if we don't have an economic improvement that provides the revenue that people need to house themselves.
All right, I'm going to say, let's just, for starters, how about we hold it to 3 minutes each, and if we get time, we'll give you a chance to come back, but let's go.
Could I, let me skip over most of what I've said. There's one thing I do want to discuss.
1 minute.
1 minute is fine. It's the road, okay? When I hear that, okay, we're going to get money for a study for the road, okay, it's like, all right, we haven't done anything with Paran Road ever, other than, you know, put some landscape cloth into it, some better gravel and stuff like that. At least we don't have fire trucks sinking to their axles anymore, which did happen once. Thank God that doesn't happen anymore. The road is still terrible. There are 100 families that use that road right now, okay? I really don't believe, there always seems to be another project like the town garage, which seems to take precedence over things that would provide a direct benefit to the townspeople, like improved roads, okay? So I really wonder, you know, whether that additional tax revenue that would come from this development would really do us any good when it comes to the nature, you know, the quality of the Paran Road. Now, in other areas where I've lived, a developer not only builds his development, but also has to provide the infrastructure to support that development, okay? So that it doesn't become a burden like improving the Paran Road would be on the existing municipality, okay? If this goes forward, I think it should be required that that road be improved to the point where you don't have to worry about busting sway bar links every winter. You're going to have to put in sidewalks for the children that are going to walk to North Bennington, including sidewalks in North Bennington, because you don't want them walking past the chemical pile there next to the, you know, in the railroad interchange.
All right, I think your minute's up. You better wrap it up.
Okay.
All right.
In general, I say anything that is not there now that is not right needs to be addressed and fixed as part of the project.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to do my best to go back and forth. So somebody who would like to speak in favor of the project may come up. I'm sorry, what?
I'm against the project.
Against it, okay. I'm going to try to go back and forth. Carl, did you want to speak in favor of the project?
Yes, I'm Carl Corman. I've told people that I've been paying taxes to Shaftsbury since 1983, although I've not lived here since that time, except the last 8 years. In my time that I was away, I often didn't get back too often, but one thing was striking when I did come back. Nothing, absolutely nothing had changed in Shaftsbury. That is both a positive thing and a negative thing. Seeing that there's this project that can start something to happen, to not speculate on all the potential needs that may occur later, or the bad things that occur, I suggest we look at what the positive thing is right now. And I would very, very much encourage the board to act as a conduit, to provide the funds, to take the next step, and I would perhaps be a little bit hesitant, but from this evening, we see that we're dealing with a very responsible, respectable company, something that could perhaps, maybe, be a jumping off point for Shaftsbury to build upon in the future.
Thank you. You wanted to speak?
Yes, we own a house on 50 acres. Hi, can you hear me now? Hello. And it's very quiet. We like the quiet, that's why we bought the house there. I'm concerned about the traffic, noise. And as someone else mentioned, the roads. I had to bring my car to the mechanic twice in the past couple of months because of all the potholes. I mean, you're talking spending all this money on this project. Where's the money to fix the roads? It doesn't make sense to me. And I don't want to live in an area where the entrance is supposed to be on McCarthy. That's a narrow road, I guess you could expand it. We came to the meeting late, but there's going to be more cars, more noise, more people. And that's not why we bought the house on McCarthy. We like it quiet. But, I mean, get the priorities in order. First fix the roads. I also happen to know of a young couple that do live in Shires housing in Arlington. Both, they're not married, they both don't work, they get food stamps, they have 4 children, and they have a rough time. The apartment is not nice. I was inside. I saw all the units, and I was honestly really disappointed with what I witnessed. So you could say all you want about how you vet people, but when you meet the people in real life that live in Shires, it's a whole nother story.
What's your name?
Denise.
Denise.
Van Auken.
Okay, Denise, I'm Joe Barber, for
Hi,
those
Joe.
that don't know.
I'm sorry, say your name again?
Denise Van Auken, V like in Victor, A-N, capital A, Q-K-E-N.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. One, you're making it sound like we're putting up the housing project. We're not, Shires is. You know, we do realize the road is a priority. Secondly, I do have a family member who does live in a Shires housing unit. And I've been there many times. It's on North Branch Street. Beautiful place, well-maintained. And I asked Bill, I said, Bill, do you have any complaints about Shires? The only complaint he had was there's not enough parking. That was it. He said snow removal, when it snows, it's cleaned up. They have to live
Joe,
by...
I'm going to ask that we stick to the rules. I promised people at the beginning that we're going to limit our debate with the citizens and let them make their case. We'll have our debate amongst
Right.
ourselves.
In a nutshell, he's thumbs up about it. He's good experience. Okay.
You got maybe 15 seconds to wrap up?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim?
Good evening, Jim Cormier. I live in Shaftsbury up in Trumbullville. Lived here for 15 years. I just wanted to address 2 things. First of all, this gentleman right here. My family migrated to this country after World War II. My father served in the Pacific. He was with the 5th Army Air Corps for 40 years. When we came here, my brother and I, and my parents, we lived in a 2-room garage. That's all we could afford. That was outside the Boston area. And then my father saved up a little bit of money, and he was able to buy a house through the GI Bill. Didn't have to pay a nickel down. And my brother and I, we had our own room. And he was able to buy another house later as we got older. And let me tell you how important that was to us after living in a 2-room garage, which was provided by a private landlord, who was very nice to us. He let us come over and watch his TV on Friday nights. So, we've got to have some government involvement in this process. Not everybody starts off at the same place. Some people have to be helped along the way. Okay. Secondly, I retired almost 5 years ago from practicing law in Bennington. And when I started out, I spent 7 years with Vermont Legal Aid and with Massachusetts, my law school legal aid. And most of my work involved representing tenants. And my mindset when I left after 7 years was, I can never represent a landlord. But then I made 2 exceptions. I ended up representing the Housing Authority and working with a wonderful man called Joe Hall. And I got to see that the positive impact that a well-maintained landlord-tenant relationship can have on a community. And then towards the end of my career, I ended up working for a gentleman who was this lady's predecessor, Mr. Broderick. And I did...
Jim, you got 30 seconds.
John Broderick for the Shires. And I was incredibly impressed with how they treat their tenants. And I got to know their maintenance staff very well because we would go to court over some issue and the tenant would say, but this doesn't work. Within a week, the maintenance people were there, the problems were fixed. And I can't tell you how blessed you are as a community to have this organization willing to come in and spend time and energy and money in our community here in Shaftsbury. That's it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Jones. I live on McCarthy Acres. My property abuts this project. I'm one of the 3 abutters. And I think we're all here, actually, the 3 of us. I grew up in low-income housing. So I'm just going to start off by saying that. So I know what it's like. I know what it's like to grow up in subsidized housing. I'm also a landlord. So I think that affordable housing is very important. And I think it's a right. People need to live and have an affordable place to live. So I appreciate Jim's story. I grew up in a similar situation, but I feel like the placement of this development isn't right. And not just because it's abutting my property, but because this area, this section of Shaftsbury, doesn't really contain rentals. It's privately owned properties. And we care for our properties. And we've invested in our properties. And I know growing up in subsidized housing that we didn't have a car growing up. So we had to walk everywhere. And we had to be able to be close to things or be close to public transportation in order to get places. And I don't really see that happening for people who would be living on a dirt road. I think a downtown location seems more suitable, and I'm a fan of reusing properties that already exist as opposed to breaking ground, and there may be other developers looking at that, but we're not here talking about that tonight. We're here talking about this project. So, I just don't feel like it's a good fit. And it seems odd to me that we talk about the tax revenue to fix the road. But in order to do that, we need a $6 to $7 million building project. So it's like the tail wagging the dog to me. Do we need to fix the road? Yeah. Maybe we should come up with some plan to do that for the residents who already exist and pay taxes and vote. So that's really what I want to say. I don't think it's a good spot for it. I just don't, for practical reasons, and other reasons too. And I'm definitely interested in taking a better look at those plans to see what I'm going to see when I look out of my living room window now. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other voices in favor of the project? Chris?
Thank you. My name is Chris Williams. I live on Maple Hill in Shaftsbury. I'm chair of the Planning Commission. And I just wanted to take a look at our town plan. And I'm not sure how important the town plan is in this situation. I would hope it would carry some weight. I have to do a next version of it in the next year, so I'm hoping that it means something.
Let me just interject there that it does. Part of the form that we're going to be signing off on or not this evening asks that this project be consistent with the town plan. And
Good. Well, then let me get right to it. Thank you. So, the town plan sets out 10 goals at the very beginning. These are the issues that Shaftsbury has agreed to because we all vote on the town.
Just keep in mind, you're going to have to get through all 10 in 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'll be brief.
You're using his time, Tim.
He started it late.
All right, so of the 10 goals that are enunciated in the town plan, section 2.6, which is the 6th goal in the town plan, says promote opportunities for affordable housing. Increasing real estate and building costs have made it difficult for some people to locate suitable housing in Shaftsbury. The town should seek innovative ways for providing a wide range of housing opportunities. Okay, well, the town's not in the business of developing housing, so we turn now to the housing section of the town plan, and we see approximately 14% of households in Shaftsbury occupy a rental unit. Median rental costs are $101 in Shaftsbury, and the county and the state median rental costs are $760 and $843 respectively. So median rents in Shaftsbury are higher than state and county averages. Source here is the Center for Rural Studies at UVM. Although the median family income in Shaftsbury provides sufficient funds to support median rental and home ownership costs, 31% of households in town pay rental costs in excess of 30% total income, and 20.5% of households pay rental costs in excess of 50% of income. That's half the money you make goes to housing. It says here that working with Shires Housing to develop new housing and similar techniques will be emphasized. So your town plan says this is the thing that we want to do. Now, we all voted on the town plan 4 years ago. There was a lot of discussion. There was, the select board went over it fairly thoroughly. There was a lot of comment on historic preservation issues. There was no comment about affordable housing. So, you know, this was not considered a controversial issue. Everybody kind of signed on. We voted in favor of it. So let's live up to our town plan. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Mary Muckle, and I live in McCarthy Acres. And every time I hear about affordable housing, I know people have got to have places to live. But we're always forgetting one thing. When we have affordable housing, it keeps the rent high because the government or state kicks in. Like, for instance, I know a place where people are paying $200 a month, and they're kicking into the one that owns the project $1,800 a month. So this has got to stop. Not everybody, I mean, we don't really realize when affordable housing is good, but at the same token, somebody's picking up the balance, and at the same time, it's keeping the rent up high, which is wrong.
Thank you. Lon?
All right. I'm Lon McClintock. I've lived here since 1989. I was the liaison for the select board to the road foreman, and for about 4 years when I was on the select board. And a couple of quick things. First, economic development is based on a lot of things coming together all at once. When the hospital was recruiting doctors, the first thing they looked at was our schools. If the schools aren't adequate, they're not going to move here. If we've looked at different companies to move here, they want to know what the schools and the housing stock are like. It's not just one thing to create economic development. If we don't have a large enough workforce, we're not going to attract large employers. We have to have affordable housing. My experience with a lot of my lower income clients is that there's really a dearth. There's not enough affordable housing in the community. The next point is, I think it's too early for you to vote yay or nay on the project. The fact that the town accepts responsibility for this grant doesn't commit you to supporting the grant, because they're very important steps that are ahead of you. One is the zoning permit, where the town's development review board can establish conditions for this project. One of those conditions could be requiring the project to pay for paving of the roads. The other thing is the Act 250 Commission, which likewise can establish conditions. So the select board doesn't have to decide if this is a great project or a poor project to vote on this particular aspect of the project. Just saying, yes, we will be the conduit for these grant funds, lets you move to the next process where you can determine whether or not this is actually going to work for the town. The folks who spoke about the roads, I agree with completely. The road's atrocious. We got some improvement when I was on the select board by installing the fabric, but I think that's not the answer. I think Paran Acres itself generates too much traffic for a gravel road, and so that's going to need to be paved. One creative solution is the fact that the village school is underpopulated, and the chair of both the village and the North Bennington Graded School District believes that there's no opportunity for increasing the population of the school. This project could help that, and they're a potential source of some funds towards this road project, because if that's one of, I still want to finish my point. If
30
you
seconds.
Okay. If you consider expanding who you look for support of the project, you may be able to deal with these very difficult situations, which I totally agree with them. We need to have it paved, but we have other potential partners we haven't explored. So I'd encourage you to vote tonight yes, with the idea that you may decide it's not going to work when you get into the details.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Avery Wood. I live on McCarthy Acres. I've been there for 15 years. And I think a lot of why you have the whole neighborhood out is this project is really not in keeping with the way that that neighborhood is now. It's a small rural area. There are very few homes around it. And it would radically change the feeling of the place that we live. I understand that it's within the zoning regulations, more or less, to be there as it is. But it does change things, and that feels really unpleasant for the people who live there. It really is going to make their lives different. My biggest concern, though, is the road. I walk that road every day. That road is a straight shot, paralleling 67 from North Bennington over to the intersection with Route 7. Cars drive down there as fast as they can. So when it's graded, it's actually really lousy to walk because the cars go really fast. I watch little kids walk on that road every day because I walk to work the same time they walk to school, And it's really unnerving to watch little kids walking along there. So if you pave the road, you have to also provide a place for people to be able to walk. You can't have kids walking. I know what people will drive like on that road if you pave it. And having an entrance from this development where you're talking about having 21 units onto McCarthy Acres, which, you know, we're neighbors. You pull over and you pass. 2 cars can't pass on McCarthy Acres. So I don't know how you're going to have an entrance going in and out. I'm really not exaggerating. You have to pull over. And so you can't really have that entrance be there without radically changing the road. And so I don't understand why that's really part of the project when you have the other entrance. But even with the other entrance, it's a narrow road. And I think that amount of traffic is going to be very problematic if you don't do some major expensive stuff, which needs to address pedestrians. I haven't heard you guys talk about pedestrians at all in the meetings, except that it was really frustrating to have you start a meeting at a different time from usual and to not make an effort to reach out to us. I'm sorry, I missed the announcement in the paper. How many acres is the land that the project's being built on? 7. So if you're going to have a well, then you need 20,000 square foot per resident. So so you're going to need to have some zoning thing happen if they don't get water, because you need to have, 20,000 square feet per unit times 21 units makes it something like 10 acres.
22 units.
Well, whatever,
Yeah,
it's more than 7.
yeah.
So I don't know where that's going to end up. It would be a lot nicer for us if you weren't adding more people to the area than already exist in that area. So maybe the project needs to be scaled back to be more in keeping with the community and to fit the acreage that it has. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yes.
Tyler?
Yeah. I've lived here for 52 years. And the house is too big and I need to downsize, and I've been looking desperately for some place to rent. And I might like one of these units myself.
Yeah.
I also, I swim every summer, and nobody's mentioned the attribute of the lake here. What a wonderful location it is in terms of the lake for people in that area. So I just want to say I hope all these problems can be resolved with the state of the road. That's certainly a problem. I certainly think it's an economic driver, and it's answering a tremendous need in this community, no question about it. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you.
Just a couple of brief rebuttals.
Let me make sure everybody else has spoken, and then we'll go back to Noel. Anybody else? All right. Yes, Cinda.
Cinda Morse. I live over on the west side of Shaftsbury. I've served on the select board, I've served on the planning commission, and I've served on the economic development committee in Shaftsbury. And I guess there are 2 things that I would comment on. I would urge you to vote yes, to move this to the next step, and addressing a number of the things Lon commented on, if you need conditions and what have you. But my primary reason for saying, suggesting that you vote yes, is financial. There's rarely a time when opportunity sort of drops in your lap. You're never going to have another chance to get $25,000 to invest in the road. We know it's a problem. It needs to be dealt with, and you have an opportunity to get some real help with that. The other thing is the extension of the sewer line. On the Economic Development Committee, we looked at sewer, not necessarily in this particular area, but we had looked at it. It's prohibitively expensive, and the town was not enthusiastic about that. But you, again, have an opportunity to have an extension of a sewer line and an opportunity, and I don't know what it would mean, but an opportunity for other folks in McCarthy Acres to perhaps sign on to that sewer line. Those things won't come by often. I think that's an opportunity that is too good for the select board to pass up in the long-term best interests of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Noel, I'll give you 1 minute for the last word.
Yep, just in response to Juan's comments about how there's no risk in going forward at this point. It's my experience a lot of these things have a tendency to take on a zombie-like life of their own and be almost impossible to kill once they've started. I think this is the best opportunity you will have to make sure that this does not go any further. And I think you really need to consider that today when you make your vote. The other thing is that there's a lot of concern that's been made about how much, as a percentage of their wages, that people have to spend on housing. And I want to return to my point that if you had value-added businesses that paid a decent wage, that percentage would plummet. And we really need to direct whatever monies are available in the direction of enhancing employment, not enhancing housing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing part of this then, and we will move on to the real only order of business, as we indicated earlier, is for the select board to decide whether or not to allow the grant application to go forward. So I am looking for a motion from the select board to approve the grant application for Shires Housing.
I'll move the motion.
Moved by Tony. Do I have a second? I will second it. Now we will go into discussion. I just had one thing I wanted to frame the discussion with. Dave, if you could bring up the slides again. Like Chris, I was reading through the town plan today and I highlighted what I thought were some relevant sections. I think it's on the next slide. Yes. So just to help frame our discussion as we talk about this, one of the things in the application says, does this agree with the town plan? And I looked at the parts that I thought were relevant. And Chris already mentioned the first one: promote opportunities for affordable housing. Increased real estate and building costs have made it difficult for some people to locate suitable housing in Shaftsbury. The town should seek innovative ways of providing a wide range of housing opportunities. Another relevant section: new residential development should provide a range of housing opportunities and be planned to preserve important natural resources and minimize the need for expenditure of public funds. Commercial uses should be located in appropriate locations as designated by zoning. And policy should be allocated to encourage a rate of growth that does not exceed the long-term historical rate of the town. Under no conditions should the rate of growth outstrip the ability of the town to pay for the additional services made necessary by that growth. Future development should bear its fair share of municipal capital and maintenance cost. So, I will open it up for discussion. And I would remind everyone, as Art did at the beginning, that we are actually deciding on a very narrow question tonight. Do we allow this application to go forward, and will we act as a conduit for the funds from the state to Shires Housing?
Tim, my problem with this is that I was in business for 32 years. And it seemed like the longer I was in business, the more the government got in my back pocket, or on my back. And I see this as Shires getting HUD money, which is our money, which a private landlord can't get. And I feel that the private landlords are at a disadvantage to Shires Housing. And as I understand it, they don't pay the same property taxes that you and I do. Also, you're talking about adding, if you say 1.5 parking spots for each unit, a minimum of 2 trips a day per car is 132 trips on that road. And it's already got about all it can handle. And also, as some of the people said, it doesn't really fit in my idea of that area.
Can I ask,
Go ahead.
Stephanie, can I ask, my understanding is you pay 100% of the assessed value, right?
We pay 100% of the town tax.
But the school tax is 90%. Okay. So they pay what everybody else would on assessment, not on what it costs to build it, but on, they have to, once it's been
Yeah, but
set.
if you're on non-resident property, if it's not your homeowner, or your, what do they call it? Homestead, you pay a rate based on your income. But if it's non-resident or business property, you pay a higher rate. And Shires pays, you pay the homeowner rate, don't you?
We pay 100% of the required rate each town.
What's the 90% then?
School.
That's school tax.
School
The
tax.
school tax.
School
Okay,
tax
I
only,
stand corrected on that.
which the school tax does not go to Shaftsbury from this district. It would all go to North Bennington.
Right.
I would just interject there that North Bennington has school choice. So some of it could come to Shaftsbury. Art?
I disagree with the fact that it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Can I ask Trevor, you got some jobs available if people had a place to stay? I know I do.
Can I answer that?
Yes, please.
I am neutral on the project, but as an employer, I do have jobs that are at a standard of living that is not minimum wage, as someone said. We do have jobs available and we can't fill them. So, yes, as an employer in this town, I have jobs I can't fill.
I agree.
And it's a problem.
I have real concerns about the road. I don't believe that the taxes that we're going to get from this will have very much of an impact on blacktopping. In fact, it would hardly, I asked Dave, what percent of the tax that a person pays goes towards the road? About 50% of it, but a lot of that is taken up with the administration, road crew work and all that sort of stuff. Comes right down to about 5% of what you pay for taxes goes for gravel, right? We are never going to be able to pave that with the money that's coming in from increased taxes. Basically, the grand list goes up by a couple $1 million. Everybody's taxes go down just a whisker, so this isn't all brand-new money. This is just rolled into what we're already paying. So I have some big concerns. There's got to be a bike path or a passway so that people can ride a bike and walk to the skateboard, to the Little League field, to downtown and that sort of stuff, which is, and I don't think this should come up on the shoulders of the taxpayers of Shaftsbury. So can this project be told to do things like that? If not, if they don't do it, I've got a problem with it. And that's, I think it's kind of early in the season to say if they will do things like that or not. Can it be stopped later on? Lon says it can be.
You know what, I'm hoping that, and we've heard some solutions about Lake Paran Road. I'm hoping that we come up with some solutions, that this starts the ball rolling. We know it's going to cost, we think at this point, $500,000 just to pave the road.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. And we know that needs to be done. And believe me, we're working on it. But we don't have that kind of money. We really don't. I'm hoping with this project, it will initiate at least we're going to get a study out of it so we can get an idea of the scope of the project. And then hopefully we're going to be able then to attract more money to help solve part of this problem. The first time I heard about pedestrian and about sidewalks, I hadn't even thought about sidewalks for kids, which I think is absolutely essential. And thank you for that information, because you're absolutely correct. Kids walking along that road, any road, even walking along our road.
You're aware that North Bennington is a walking school district?
Yeah, that's what absolutely. Yes, that's what, it just didn't occur to me until you mentioned it, but thank you. So I'm hoping that this project will then generate, hopefully, some funding and some creative solutions to the big problem we have with Lake Paran Road in general. Now, as far as affordable housing, workforce housing, that's part of a whole big economic, hopefully, development that's occurring in this section of the state. Is it going to happen? I hope so. But we're one small cog in this entire wheel that needs to happen. I used to work in New York State in Albany. Before they started Tech Valley, they started working on structure and infrastructure, schools, roads, housing, literally decades ago. So this isn't a short-term project. This is a long-term project, which probably won't be completed at least in my lifetime. So I'm hoping that this is just the beginning. We have not had any new building in Shaftsbury like this in a long time. And it's going to begin. Hopefully it's going to begin. The only way you're going to attract people is to bring housing in and to bring the jobs in. I absolutely agree with you.
Bring the jobs first.
Bringing the jobs to Southern Vermont.
Joe, do you have some comments?
Okay, if I can speak, yeah.
Yes, you may.
Okay. Okay, so actually, what I wanted to say about the Shires housing project is it's very impressive once you look at it. But at the same time, is it a good fit for Paran Acres? The other part of my concern is the 90% of the school tax that Shires will be paying will definitely benefit North Bennington more so than it would ever Shaftsbury. And I'll tell you this, because I grew up in the town. I know Mrs. Muckle and Mrs. Scary and Mr. Myers, everybody up on that road. Everybody from McCarthy Acres down, this is before Paran Acres even existed, everybody went to North Bennington School on the Shaftsbury side. So I can't really see where anybody staying at Shires will be going to Shaftsbury School. It's not going to happen. I mean, when North Bennington is in walking distance and they have a school choice, they're going to go to North Bennington. So as far as that goes, the 90%, I don't think we'll see any of it. In the other part of the argument that I would have, and not to say anything bad about Shires because they have an excellent housing institution, I guess if you'd call it that, is the quality of life for the people that live in Paran Acres, and for the people that live in McCarthy Acres. They're lifelong residents, most of them, and the people that have moved there for the sole purpose of having peace and tranquility. And I think when they raise concerns about the traffic and their quality of life being disrupted, it's concerning. So we can't forget about these people that live there. I mean, we have to try and accommodate them as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But that's my piece.
There's one fact that doesn't seem to be correct, if I could just point it out, which is usually the town's paving projects were based on a competitive state grant that we would apply for every year. And so Art's point about the amount of taxes generated, municipal tax generated by this project would never cut it on a paving project, because absolutely right. Whether or not having affordable housing as the reason why you need a large paving grant for Paran Road is something that's worthy of consideration, because the state is giving you, I forget what the percentage, 75 or 80% of the funds to do the paving in the town of Shaftsbury. So, you know, this may represent an opportunity to get state money to do something that the town has never been able to afford to do on its own.
Can I ask Dave, what's the criteria for a paving project?
Paran Road isn't qualified because it's not a Class 2 state road.
That's what I thought.
They only fund Class 2 roads. They won't fund any Class 3 or Class 4 roads. And they do this Class 1 themselves.
But the classification can change.
In theory, yes. If we had 24 units, I suppose, I wouldn't really have an answer, but I suppose we could look into that. I don't know what the criteria is for changing the classification. I can see where they would object to that at some level, because a lot of people would then request, because not only could I get the paving grant, I could get the gravel road, I could get money for gravel. So,
Right, the paving study would be part of the road study, I would think.
yeah, that's a good word.
Good question. I have to bring my young 92-year-old mom home. She's not feeling well. You mentioned voting. Is everyone here going to vote tonight?
No, just the select board is going to vote tonight.
Oh, so we can leave then.
You may leave. We'll tell you what happened. No.
I just want to point out that Juan's comments are highly speculative, and I really think that it's a case of wishes for fishes, and the board should not make a decision based on what the state may or may not do at some point in the future, whenever that may be, because the road really needs attention 5 years ago.
But I think the point of this vote that's being taken now is not whether or not the road gets paved or not.
Right.
We're only looking at, I really believe that zoning in Act 250 could stop this project, because I don't feel that the town people of Shaftsbury have to pave that portion of the road that's being used a lot more.
I feel if the project went, that should be part of the project cost. In other words, Shires should pay for it. When I worked for the town of Shaftsbury in the 70s, and they built Paran Acres, I tried to get the selectmen to pass an ordinance to get the developer to pave that road. And I nearly got a firing squad for it. But they never did. And it's not just paving the road. The first time, you've got a lot of things to contend with when you pave a road. You've got to have a decent base under it, or your pavement's not going to stay anyway. And the second thing is, there is a time schedule, and I'm not sure what it is. It might be 5 years that you've got to repave it. So it's not just the first cost. It's a continuing cost. And you could do a lot of grading for what it'll cost to pave that road.
I lived on a road in White Creek that was paved right after I moved in, and it's a dirt road again now. It was about the same kind of quality road, very wet, very muddy, and the pavement just isn't there anymore.
It wasn't the first time that they paved.
When they dug down to do some plumbing, they found a pavement down below where it had been paved before.
A lot of towns paved roads before they have a decent base, and they're back to gravel, as is Lake Shaftsbury Road right now for the town. Town of Shaftsbury did the same thing.
Bennington turned about a mile, I think it was Middle Pound Road, back to dirt a couple years ago.
There's probably no foundation in it.
Yeah, that's right.
A couple of things I would like to address. Joe, you said that all the school taxes from this project will go to North Bennington. And I would remind you that there's a significant number of Shaftsbury residents. The people in District 1 are Shaftsbury residents. And so it's not like it's going to a foreign country if the tax money from District 1 goes to the village school. That benefits Shaftsbury residents, was the first point I wanted to make. A couple of things that were mentioned by the public that seem to think that the select board should spend the $6 million on our roads instead of on affordable housing. And I would remind people, this is not our money. This is essentially a private individual, private entity. They're not government. They get government money, but they own land. They want to develop it. It's up to them. We don't get that money to spend on our roads. And another comment I would make right related to that is the economy in this town needs help. It's rough. The economy in this town, this county, this state is rough. And the way we get money to spend money on roads is by improving the economy. And so we don't get that whole $6 million, but that's how we start getting money, as Tony was saying, to improve the roads is by improving the state of the economy. And I guess another point I would come back to is this project is building something that we desperately need. We've had a couple of employers say, yeah, we could hire if we could get housing. I've talked to a number of employers that say the same thing. The Putnam block in Bennington is evidence of that same desire. The hospital, the college, other employers put up their own money to back the Putnam block project to create housing. The employers are having to get into the housing business in order to house their employees. And so I see this as just a fortunate thing that we have somebody that's willing to do that in Shaftsbury. And as Tony said, there's really no other development going on here in Shaftsbury. Any other comments? Yes, Avery.
I just was reading the town plan part, and it says under no conditions should the rate of growth outstrip the ability of the town to pay for the added services. And so, I mean, actually this building isn't going to affect me all that much. I live down the road, I'm not going to see them, but I really am worried about the road, and I do wonder, is there another place in Shaftsbury where we don't have such a road issue, that we're taking such a risk in having to maintain a road that's really not maintainable? Like that piece of property for sale over on the Bennington School property that's over on the Overley Road. It's a big flat field on a paved road. It has bus service for the kids. It just seems like the infrastructure is there, and the infrastructure is not on the, I'm drawing blank on Paran Road.
Well, I guess my comment would be, I don't think there's any danger of us growing too fast at the moment. Our growth rate is negative. And maybe there are better places to build affordable housing. That's really up to the market to decide that. And you know, I guess my suggestion would be, you know, if there's a better place out there, I'd like to see somebody go do it. But it comes down to people who own property that's properly zoned. Are they allowed to develop it? And again, as we pointed out several times, our part in this is very small. We're $500,000. This is a $500,000 question out of a $6.3 million project. So it's, and there are several other hurdles to overcome. Carl.
One of the things really got me concerned here is
I'm hearing about how terrible a road is that we have. Whether, if this project goes away, we're gonna have a terrible road.
Right.
We have no way to fix that terrible road.
Right.
But if you vote tonight, just to see if there may be a way to fix the road, you can do that later and still vote tonight in favor of it. And if you can't, and it's still an important matter, then you vote it down. But if you vote it down now, when we know that road stinks, and there's no way we can pay for it, but give up the 1 in 100 chance that maybe we can figure out another way, you haven't done a service to this town. So I would like to just say, I encourage you to simply vote to allow you to decide later.
Right.
I'd like to say, would I rather have a crappy road or 100 and overnight neighbors? I'm gonna go with the crappy road. I'm gonna drive over some potholes, then have like instantly a whole new neighborhood, essentially right outside my door, which changes the whole flavor of our little community right now. So, yeah, I'll drive over some potholes.
Noel and Avery, anybody else before we give them their last word? Yes, ma'am.
I still wish that they would go and invest in the school around Main Street in Bennington. They've got all kinds of money to put that money into that land overlooking the lake, which is beautiful wildlife. Why don't they take their money and invest over in Bennington at that school, which needs to be the tore down or what have you? And they only pay $3,000 a year taxes. Why does that happen? I mean, they could go and buy it for peanuts and really make a nice, affordable living units.
No.
The estimate to pave the whole road is about $500,000. When the select board put their mind to it, they were able to generate $1.5 million for a new town garage. So I don't really think that the road cannot be dealt with if this project does not go forward.
Avery.
My concern is just that there's that 1% chance that the development gets built and then the road doesn't happen. And I mean, if you flip that around, that means it's a 99% chance that the development gets built and the road doesn't get addressed. I somehow, I really want you guys to have it in your hearts that you're going to couple those two things if it's really going to move ahead.
I think that's one of the criteria for Act 250, is that does it impact the services of the town? In some cases, towns have had, or projects have had to buy fire trucks, and put up roundabouts and all that sort of stuff. Act 250 is going to get involved, and we're going to be at the table of Act 250. We're going to be one of the parties, and I'm very insistent that the town taxpayers don't pay for all that.
Art, that's also true for the Development Review Board, that that's one of the criteria that the town will be asked to weigh in on.
If that's the case, why isn't that road right now changed from what it's listed as with 100 people living in that area? Why doesn't that warrant a different rating of that road so we can get money from the state? It's not rated as a 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever the ratings are in order to get qualified for state money. Why wouldn't it be with all the people that are traveling on that road?
I don't know what the qualifications for rate changing. Usually rates, whether it's a class 2, what is it?
It's a class 3.
It's class 3, but class 2 connects either a towns or connects a main road to another main road, right?
Correct.
Okay. For instance, the White Creek Road connects to another state. That's a class 2. And so we get money to pay that, but not a road within the town itself.
Yes, sir.
The other question at the same time about I talked about the headlights on McCarthy Acres. At the same time, that's always been a nice dark road. And as soon as those places get built there is going to be a lot of lighting. And the town would have to flip for street lights. Another concern, I mean, it's always a nice stuff to have a little dark.
Yeah.
As soon as that goes in, there's going to be like a football field with
All right, any more discussion? Any more comments from the select board? Okay, then I will.
We've got Trevor.
Trevor, last word.
Yeah. So my apologies, I came late because I was on board at the Early Childhood Center. Ironically, this is kind of the exact housing that we do for our teachers. But I came neutral. I still am neutral, but I think that I would encourage the board to vote yes tonight. And it's not an affirmation of moving this project forward, but I think that there needs to be some thoughtful, maybe, and I went through it with my transfer stations where there were some subcommittees that were made that fleshed out some of these issues. There are solutions that can be come up with. I mean, as I sit here and listen to the different impacts that are being created, what about a small percentage of the new roadway, everybody that uses that road, including paramedics, including all the people. So what would that be? Would that be $50 extra a year that people could chip in? Maybe. But I also think that by moving forward and really engaging the people that are here in the process and educating them, because I know the process, there are people in this room that know the process very well, and there are people in this room that do not know the process at all. It's intimidating. It's worrisome about this is a repeat for me in a lot of cases. And I think that if it moves forward, I think that there has to be good communication and there has to be impact mitigation for some of these folks. I look at that map and I look at the Myers' house and I worry about what the impact is going to be on them. I worry about what streetlights do. I personally don't like the streetlights on the new highway. I think that changed the character of things. I think that these things need to be fully engaged with the people of the impact. But as far as moving it past this one stage, I think the worst thing that could happen tonight is that there's a vote and everybody walk away with frustrated and not engaging the process because Act 250, DRV needs to be a transparent process for everybody. So now I have it. It took me a little bit. But on the labor thing, just one last point on that. As an employer, I'm tired of worrying about who the applicant is that came in because it might be ours, or it might be Brian Knox, or it might be somebody else. We have functional full employment in this town. The jobs are there, the people are not. We need a new pool of people. I can tell you that for sure. That I'm very excited about.
Okay, thank you. All right, gentlemen, if there's nothing else here, I'm going to call for a vote. The vote is to approve the application for the Vermont Community Development Program grant to pass through the town to Shires Housing for the Paran Lake project. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? No?
No.
So we have 4 yeas and 1 no. So the motion is agreed to.
It is adjourned.
And that takes care of it. I just wanted to say thanks to all of you for showing up. This is a really good crowd, a healthy discussion, and I want to thank you all for coming here with, I know, especially the people from McCarthy Acres with a lot of passion. It's beautiful out there overlooking the lake, and I know exactly how you feel, and if I lived there, I'd probably feel the same way you do. But I'm glad that we could all come here, have this discussion, and keep it civil. And I think that's a credit to all of us, so thank you.